Like, again, Christian Brown is not going to be KCP. So I think we all have to understand that, which I think we do.
The Nuggets have fired head coach Michael Malone and general manager Calvin Booth, according to ESPN.
Nobody thought a single team in the NBA would be able to one-up the Memphis Grizzlies, firing their head coach Taylor Jenkins with 9 games left in the regular season. But the Denver Nuggets came out and said, "Hold my beer, NBA," shocking the entire basketball world when they announced that they fired their head coach Michael Malone with 4 games left in the regular season, and fans are wondering why. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NBA news to your device. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. We've been making a lot of money using my brand new live pick strategy on Prize Picks, and we're ramping up for the tail end of the NBA season. I give away my picks on Instagram at TheFlightMike and on Patreon at Microphone, and use my promo code Microphone to get $50 when you make a play of $5 or more. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The moment we found out that Michael Malone was being fired, everybody was asking why, and even Shams' explanation doesn't make a lot of sense.
My understanding is they felt kind of like the Grizzlies did. They've lost 4 games in a row, bottom half in the league in defensive rating, and so they felt like the signs were there that this season was not going to end well.
Some fans are suggesting that this interview that Michael Malone gave 2 weeks ago was the writing on the wall.
It was a brutally honest message, and the guys that are full won't hear it. They'll say coach is tripping. And the guys that maybe do really care will, because they're not going to go back and watch their minutes, because nobody watches their minutes. Nobody watches film. So we'll have to show them the film.
I mean, if you take a deep dive into their recent losses, it's clear that the Denver Nuggets are not losing because of Michael Malone. Let's take a look at their double overtime game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, for example. In the literal final moments of the game, Denver is going to find themselves up 1, defending for their lives with the shot clock off. Now, for context at this point, Nikola Jokic already has a historic 60-point triple-double. He's done everything he can to keep his team in this game, and he wouldn't have those numbers in that green light to take over this game if Malone didn't trust him. Now, back to the play, Anthony Edwards has the ball on the far wing with some very questionable spacing around him. So what does Denver do? They send defensive freak Peyton Watson blitzing his way, forcing a turnover and getting notorious speedster Russell Westbrook on a 2-and-1 fast break. He does the smart thing. He hits Christian Brown, gets it right back, and absolutely blows the open layup that would have all but iced the game. Now Minnesota gets another chance at a game-winning shot, and after some ball movement, they find a wide open Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the corner due to his matchup, which happens to be Russell Westbrook. Ball watching. Russ then shoots into the corner like a madman to contest the 3, but he goes too far, fouling Alexander-Walker in the process and giving him 3 chances at the free throw line to give his team the win as time expired. Malone had his team well coached and in a perfect position to win the game, but Russell Westbrook had one of his worst sequences of the year, and now I guess Nuggets owner Stan Kroenke thinks otherwise, which is insane considering in the 4th quarter, Denver had a perfect chance to put the game away after some beautiful ball movement to Christian Brown in the corner before Brown would brick the 3. If you watch the games, it's evident that the Nuggets are amongst the most well-coached teams in basketball, but now they won't have that luxury, and it will be painfully obvious once they have to fight one of these monster Western Conference teams in a 7-game series. The Denver Nuggets have always been one of those teams that would come so close to hoisting up the Larry O'Brien trophy, but were never really able to get the job done. The closest that they were able to come to this feat was the 2008 to 2009 Denver Nuggets that would lose to the Los Angeles Lakers in 6 in the Western Conference Finals. Since then, this team has been a perennial first-round exit or would not even make it to the playoffs. But all of that would change following the 2018 to 2019 season, where Tim Connolly and Michael Malone would take the Denver Nuggets to new heights. Behind an offense that was crafted around Nikola Jokic, the Denver Nuggets were able to make it to the Western Conference semifinals before losing in 7 to the Portland Trailblazers. The very next year, they would finish 3rd in the West and make it to the Western Conference Finals and lose to the Los Angeles Lakers. Following that, they would get swept in the second round by the Phoenix Suns, lose in the first round to the Golden State Warriors, and then following that run, Tim Connelly decided enough was enough and decided to take a job with the Minnesota Timberwolves as their brand new general manager. The bones for the Denver Nuggets were still in place. Tim Connelly drafted Jamal Murray, drafted Michael Porter Jr., swung a huge trade for Aaron Gordon, the perfect supporting cast for Nikola Jokic. And right when he decided to take another job with the Minnesota Timberwolves, he passed the torch on to Calvin Booth, who was perceived as his protege and got to reap the fruits of his predecessor's labor. The Denver Nuggets would win the 2023 NBA championship after a dominant run in the playoffs, sweeping the Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference Finals so badly that LeBron James flirted with retirement following the series.
I don't know. I got a lot to think about, to be honest. And just for me personally, going forward with the game of basketball.
The Nuggets would eventually defeat the Miami Heat and win the franchise's first NBA championship. And this was done on the backs of Nikola Jokic and tremendous depth behind all of their players. They were hitting in the draft, selecting players like Christian Brown. They had incredible role players like Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Jeff Green was playing incredible for his age. Aaron Gordon proved to be the perfect complement to Nikola Jokic. This would be the very peak of Denver Nuggets basketball before everything would go to crap. In the offseason, the Denver Nuggets would lose Bruce Brown to the Indiana Pacers just simply because they couldn't afford him, and Jeff Green would walk as well. It was definitely a huge step back for the organization, who won the NBA Finals on the back of their depth. And things would get really bad from here on out. In August of 2023, their general manager Calvin Booth told the media that, "I just want dudes that we try to develop. If it costs us the chance to win a championship this year, so be it. It's worth the investment. It's more about winning 3 out of 6, 3 out of 7, 4 out of 8 than it is about trying to go back to back." Pretty much, Calvin Booth is willing to waste Nikola Jokic's prime years in order to develop some role players on the roster. A bizarre move considering that Jokic was 29 at the time that he said this. And well, Calvin Booth would put his money where his mouth is, signing their first round pick Zeke Naji to a 4-year, $32 million contract extension, which made no sense at all whatsoever when you consider the fact that Naji was averaging about 14 minutes per game the year prior and averaged about 5.2 points per game the year prior. I mean, throughout Naji's entire career, he played 12.4 minutes per game in 194 games and averaged about 4.5 points per game. This contract was nonsensical and it screwed the Denver Nuggets. And we saw it the very next year. The Nuggets were able to easily get past the Los Angeles Lakers once again, but would run out of gas versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, going up 3-2 versus their former general manager's team before being blown out in Game 6 and choking a 20-point lead in Game 7. And things would go from bad to worse here. You see, Zeke Naji wasn't the only mistake that Calvin Booth would make. In the summer of 2023, he would also extend Reggie Jackson on a 2-year, $10 million contract. 1 year later, Calvin Booth would give up multiple second-round picks just to get rid of Reggie Jackson's contract in a 6-team sign-and trade. But it was already too late. By then, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was out the door and signing with the Orlando Magic because the Denver Nuggets simply couldn't afford him, especially after the inefficient usage of their salary cap space. This, combined with the brand new collective bargaining agreement, completely screwed the Denver Nuggets. And going into the 2024-25 season, the Nuggets were once again even thinner than they were before. One of their best bench role players, Christian Brown, was now a starter for the team, and they were depending on him more than ever. They tried to find a backup point guard in Russell Westbrook, who admittedly has played a little bit better than he has in years past in his role as a sixth man for the Denver Nuggets, shooting 33% from 3, but this was clearly a problem that bothered Michael Malone. As in the offseason, there was a report that came out from Zach Lowe that said that the coaching staff and the front office of the Denver Nuggets don't see eye to eye. Now, why would this be the case? Well, because the Denver Nuggets let KCP walk in free agency, and he shot 41% from 3 last year. The only thing they did to replace him was Russell Westbrook, which forced Christian Brown into the starting lineup. The Nuggets have one of the best starting fives in the NBA and one of the best players in the NBA, if not the best player in the NBA. But without depth, which was the #1 cause for their demise the year prior, things didn't look good for the Denver Nuggets moving forward. Now, in case people thought that this was just a rumor spun by one of the most trusted insiders and analysts in basketball, Michael Malone would say this following the Denver Nuggets opening loss to the OKC Thunder.
Going into the season, shooting is a concern of mine. You lose a guy like KCP who was a 40% three-point shooter. You know what I mean? And I thought Christian Brown was great tonight. Again, Christian Brown is not going to be KCP. So I think we all have to understand that, which I think we do, and embrace CB for who he is.
So when ESPN came out and said that they fired Michael Malone, originally my belief was that they were siding with Calvin Booth over Michael Malone, but they very quickly after said that they were firing their general manager as well. With 4 games left in the season, one has to wonder, why were both of these individuals fired? I mean, at the end of the day, the Denver Nuggets were the 4th seed in the Western Conference. They could have potentially made it into the playoffs as a 3rd seed and faced off against either the Los Angeles Clippers, Golden State Warriors, Minnesota Timberwolves, or Memphis Grizzlies in the first round of the NBA playoffs. This team easily had a ceiling of making it into the 2nd round, and they clearly hit on their head coaching hiring of Michael Malone. The man has been the head coach of the Denver Nuggets for the past 10 years, and even has a Denver Nuggets tattoo for crying out loud. He was the head coach of the only Denver Nuggets team to ever win an NBA championship, and he has proven to you that if you give him the right roster, he will be able to take this team where it needs to go. The Nuggets have consistently been well coached, dominating LeBron James-led teams in the playoffs as well. And if Nikola Jokic is the top asset on the Denver Nuggets, Michael Malone is the 2nd biggest asset on the Denver Nuggets, crafting an incredible offense around Nikola Jokic to help him win those MVPs to begin with. If you think about it, there hasn't been an offense like the Denver Nuggets in the NBA ever. How often have you seen a talent like Nikola Jokic? Now imagine trying to harness a talent like Nikola Jokic to his fullest potential, and Michael Malone was doing that perfectly. It doesn't take a genius to understand that the reason why the Denver Nuggets haven't experienced as much success recently was because of their general manager Calvin Booth consistently making the wrong decisions whenever it comes to constructing a roster around Jokic. Michael Malone was never the problem, and now for the 2nd time in his career, Michael Malone gets fired after taking a team that hasn't sniffed the playoffs all the way to the NBA Finals. Michael Malone has experienced this in his career before with the Sacramento Kings when he was unjustly fired, and went on to find success with the Denver Nuggets. And it's really a shame because I don't think people understand how difficult it is to find a good head coach in the NBA. Think of how many coaches the Phoenix Suns have gone through recently, going from Monty Williams to Frank Vogel to Mike Budenholzer, who is currently on the hot seat, by the way. For all you know, Michael Malone is going to be coaching the Phoenix Suns next year. Or how about the Los Angeles Lakers, moving on from Frank Vogel, then going to Darvin Ham, who clearly wasn't the right head coach for the roster, before finding JJ Redick. Or the Milwaukee Bucks, who fired their head coach that won an NBA championship in Mike Budenholzer, then hired Adrian Griffin, who led them to a 30-13 record before firing him to bring in Doc Rivers instead. It's really difficult to find a good head coach in the NBA, and good head coaches don't grow on trees, especially head coaches that craft unique offenses to bring the best out of its players. So firing Michael Malone is without a doubt a huge step back and a horrific mistake, because I can't think of an upgrade off the top of my head. I understand firing Calvin Booth, but firing your head coach with 4 games left to go in the regular season is a huge mistake. But I don't know, maybe the Denver Nuggets see something that I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below what do you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.